Hey, welcome to another Mohawk Forex True Live Scalping stream. Yes, welcome back. And yeah, we're about 10 minutes away from the first kind of medium news event. I say medium as obviously if you're watching Bloomberg or anything else, obviously the Russia-Ukraine war and events are overriding everything again at the moment. That's in full focus. We're keeping an eye on that because obviously this can affect our normal economic calendar and has done over the last month or so. I wanted to have a go at trading the balance of trade news event and the PMIs. We're going to see the results in about 10 minutes and then we'll see if we can jump in on gold on those results, and then we'll switch to the US-30, which we're looking at now on our 3-minute chart for the NY Open, and then we'll flick back to gold again for the ISM news, which will be coming up, as you can see, at 3 p.m. London time, which is 10 a.m. in Eastern Standard Time. So yeah, we've got this exports, imports news, balance of trade, market composite, all coming up in 8 minutes, the balance of trade, sorry, and then we've got the market composite later on, 15 minutes after the open, and then the ISM. So 3 kind of separate news events here. We'll do this balance of trade first. And we'll try and go the traditional way and going with gold with the news at the moment, but we're not going to enter bang on. We're going to wait and see the indicative move. Usually we like to jump in really quick, but obviously at the moment with the news that's kicking off in the background with the Russian-Ukraine, and they're on about coal imports being stopped from Russia and other sanctions kicking into place, that is overriding everything, especially as Russia's reserves are gold. That's all they've got to survive off, basically. But the news is all about whether the Europeans and Americans are going to let them move the gold or not. So gold's going to be very much in focus. But for the balance of trade, a higher than expected figure is positive for the dollar, and the lower than expected should be negative. So no great shakes there. But what we usually do is trade the reverse with gold on this, but as it's pre-market, we'll go with it. So if the news is good, we'll look for buys. If the news is bad, we'll look for sells. That's as simple as on gold. See here, gold been in a tight range. A couple of trades on this morning in the European session, open and London. Just going to put this on the chart. And obviously for those of you who are new to this, obviously go to the website www.mohawkforex.com if you want to gain access to this, our AX trading system, our unique system for scalping, true scalping on 3-minute time frames, and others if you prefer, but 3-minute is the bang on time frame for this, trading fundamentals, news events and the opens, and all the information on how to get myself and others as your mentors, teach you the true art of scalping, and to become part of our Discord VIP group where we post setups, ideas, chats, mentors, Zoom calls and everything, all via Discord. It's all on the website and in the description in the YouTube channel below. So you see, we've got London Open here. Look, London Open, there was a nice drop. We caught that. We caught the reverse back off, and then we caught the rest of the drop down as well on gold. That was a few good trades there. But now we're looking for this balance of trade news. As you can see, gold is pushing up. This could be purely down to the news that's being on at the moment. It's going to go on in the background.
And so if the West is prepared, for example, to cut off all imports of Russian oil and gas,
it's going to be pretty significant, China, which way they go. Meetings between China and Ukraine. Got to choose a side, basically. So it's going to be very interesting.
It's likely to morph into something similar to the Balkans wars of the 1990s.
US-30, going to keep out of this. We're going to trade this.
For all of us. Andrew Weiss there of the Carnegie Endowment. Tom Keane, what a difficult time. And it's got
4 minutes to go.
Over the last few weeks and the last month for that matter too.
These atrocities are a major shift, major shift, John, in that before this, invisible, maybe, or not believing in this in our lack of
News
news.
to look out for.
It was about NATO. It was about diplomacy. It was suits and ties.
I think it's with the news, it's all going to be second fiddle to the main news. You got to always know that. That's why we don't jump in. We want the news results to come out. We'll see the price action, and then we'll jump in on the trade.
How we witness it, even all these miles away, thousands of miles away from where it's taking place.
Right.
And Tom, that ramps up the pressure on the politicians to do more. Can the Europeans this week get away with just offering a proposal on phasing out Russian coal after what we all saw over the weekend?
I think the reporting is a proposal's got to go further. I don't have knowledge on that. John, I would do this overlay. The second Chechen war was grim. That ended 2009-ish, 2008-ish. Twitter started, yes, a few years
That's the trade's expected to be lower. Let's see how this
the Russian
85.5
wars in
shapes up
Georgia
and see if they announce it on
Chechnya,
Bloomberg or not.
the kind of social media today. And again, this Biden approach, I don't know.
This is the big one. You need to propose coal imports, banning of coal imports from Russia. This will move gold, that is for sure.
Yeah, and something that he's been congratulated for, Tom, along the way, before the invasion and through the invasion as well. Tom,
Set up on gold on the broker. We're trading with 1 to 500 leverage. IC Markets is my preferred broker for true scalping, as we call it.
Blockchains? Well, blockchains sell blocks. But why are some blockchains super expensive, like Ethereum, while other blockchains are super cheap, like Solana?
Of RBC Capital Markets in about 5 minutes' time, and why he has some doubts the Fed can keep going at a 50 basis point clip through the summer and beyond. That's next.
Let's keep it on this. I've got 2 minutes to go. We've had some, done a good successful morning so far. We've done 21 trades already since London Open and just 2 losses and 21 trades, so we're well up at the moment, playing with what I say is house money, so that's always good, gives you a little bit of extra confidence. So gold set up, 1 standard lot as normal. Like I say, you can do US-30 as well, but I'm going to go in on gold. I might trade it. Like I say, it's just I want to see news. Result. There it is. Look, puts a trades balance. Up. There's 1 minute to go. We'll just stick on this. We'll load it up. Good luck, everybody.
Nuestro experimento, no hemos pintado todos los edificios de blanco, sino estos más asequibles.
Wait for this countdown to occur.
Hemos detectado reducciones medias en el área metropolitana de 0,8 grados aproximadamente en un periodo de ola de calor y con picos máximos de 4 grados de disminución en un momento puntual del día, en una zona puntual del día. Y como dices, en una ciudad como Barcelona funciona incluso mejor que las zonas verdes, según las mediciones nos detectan incrementos, disminuciones de temperaturas mayores con tejados blancos que con incrementos de zonas verdes como tienen planteados el plan director urbanístico.
Access the financial world on demand.
Okay, let's see. Here's results. Let's have a look. Let's wait and see what it comes out. It says no panic, no stress. 89.2 is the balance of trade. So that's worse than expected. So let's have a quick look at gold. See if we get a push down on gold or whether gold's going to be up. Let's have a look. It should be. See if it moves at all. There's other news events. Exports up good. This is the main one, the high impact. $89.2. Minus, negative, worse. So let's see if gold is going to reverse back. RSI, look at the RSI, see 66. So the chance here of a cheeky little sell. Oh, look, wait for the RSI to indicate a movement. Not looking for much on this.
Here's a move for you. Let's get straight to it. Twitter in the pre-market is higher off the back of this headline. Crossing the Bloomberg terminal. Twitter to appoint Elon Musk to the board of directors. Twitter saying there's an agreement with Musk to not own more than 14.9% of the company. Of course, he's taken a so-called passive 9.2% stake. 24 hours later, Tom, there's nothing passive about it. Twitter saying Musk's term to expire at its 2024 annual meeting. I'd say this is the beginning, Tom. This is not the end.
John, I just did a center tendency on the Twitter ascent when they were about
Crazy.
$60 a share.
Musk.
And the average point there, and I'm just making this up quick.
Yeah, we're just watching. We're not in a trade yet. We're waiting to see. RSI 67. Like I say, the balance of trade. Like I say, none of these news events are guaranteed right now. So it's interesting to watch and see. That's why I wanted to do the stream. So worse than expected. So yeah, as it's pre-market, we'd usually go with a sell on gold.
Dogecoin,
So
or in this case, whether it's Twitter for that matter as well. Tom, is this going to be any different?
No, the debate this morning, and I'm not.
wait, we'll watch. Watch on gold. Watch this RSI. See if it goes 66.
So when I go out and trash the tots, the rare times when they lose, I guess I can go back in and edit the tweet later.
Yeah, this is not going to be about an editing button at all.
Yeah.
And I think if we lead with that, we're being disingenuous. This is going to be about freedom of speech. And Elon Musk's interpretation of freedom of speech versus, say, currently what's going on internally at Twitter and their interpretation of freedom of speech.
Does he push to bring back Donald Trump?
I think he might do. I don't know what's in his mind. I wouldn't get into the business of trying to work out what he thinks. Is that possible? Sure, that's possible.
I think that the edit button is part of the conversation. I agree with you that it's not the main thing, but that's part of crowdsourcing news standards, right? I mean, these are some of the discussions that you have in a newsroom.
There we go. We've got the opposite, a bull break. There we go. Just shows you how things are. Got a bull break on gold. That's a good signal to buy. It's breaking that level, so that's pretty good. Got 2.5 minutes to go on this level. Move this across.
And the edit button, that's a media distraction.
Okay, maybe you got to see who comes in here. You got to see who comes into play when you look at the HDS function there with Mr. Musk very clearly at the top of the pile of who owns Twitter. Right now at the top of the pile.
See if that's going to push up to hit that minor resistance zone.
Tom Porcelli, chief U.S. economist at RBC Capital Markets. It's percolating, Tom, that wage growth, maybe it's subsiding.
Nice.
What is a Porcelli take
Pushing up.
on your meat and potatoes wage growth?
Yeah, good morning to you all. It's good to be with you.
RSI 74, look, perfect.
It's been interesting, right?
Like I say, no sales. Caught us by surprise, not because we were prepared for it. Like I say, you don't want to jump in anything at the moment. I'm going to wait for the RSI to give us that indication. Push up it is, so it's gone against the news as it would traditionally. That's fine. But this could all be to do with Russia, nothing to do with the balance of power. Balance of trade, sorry.
The economy slows down from, we printed what, 8% consumption last year?
Right, we just got in and closed one at 12.50, so we've got about $18 on the first trade.
I think that's going to take a lot of the sort of the heat off of.
Let's see if it's going to push up into the zone, into our 75 zone.
I think we're in a very different spot now. I can tell you that in terms of total compensation, you're probably looking at 5.
This is the good thing, you see, you've got to adjust your trading system and strategy when news events and things like this are happening in the world at the moment. So
you're meaningfully lower than that, right? So you're looking at probably what, 1 to 2% real. I mean, it's just, I think that there's a lot less.
so let's see.
From a
Brilliant. Okay, we close another buy there. We've got two 12.50s on that, so that was £25. So that's about $35. There you go, just on that buy on gold.
decline that we're living has been much longer than the one a number of years ago. What is it about the duration of negative wage growth that matters?
Yeah, I mean, look, you're seeing it show up in the confidence numbers. You know, I remember
That's the thing about scalping, you see. It doesn't really matter which way it goes. I mean, you might predict, we wanted it to be a sell to go with our prediction of the news, but if it doesn't, you don't panic. You then go with the way of the trend. And I think a lot of traders find that hard to do. They're so obsessed with one particular direction that if the price doesn't go their way, they just like smash their laptops, whatever, and then leave it alone. And then they should have gone with the trend anyway. Now we'll still look for sells because look, we've seen a nice M to W pattern on gold here, coming up to some resistance levels. So depending on what RSI does, if it breaks into this zone, it's a buy. If it comes out, it's a sell. That's totally fine. So we want sells, we will hang on for them.
At the moment, it's saying the following. I'm excited to share that we're appointing Elon Musk to our board. Through conversations with Elon in recent weeks, it became clear to us that he would bring great value to our board. Tom, I'll go on to say that he's both a passionate believer and intense critic of the service, which is exactly what we need on Twitter and in the boardroom to make.
Now we'll see it pushing back off this resistance. We'll just stick with gold at the moment. We'll have a quick look at US-30. US-30 really didn't do anything. Look, there was the result. Worse than expected news, and it dropped. So contrary to how we usually do it, US-30 went with the news, and so did gold. You know, gold we usually goes opposite. You know, the correlation with US-30. So it did. The news, as you can see, worse than expected. So in a way, it was good that US-30 is a buy, and US-30 was a sell, and gold was a buy. Now we'll just wait for this to hit the resistance to see if price comes back and retests our trend line, neutral support here. Excuse me, I'll wait for that.
Engage in technological advancement to help boost productivity. And I think one of the things that really sort of...
And again, there was no indication when that news event came up, outlook, the RSI hadn't really done anything.
How they really wanted to sort of engage.
I'd see a nice kink in the direction.
And then I think fast forward to the idea that companies were having a really hard time finding workers, and as a result, wage pressures were being bid up. I think that
it dropped a few points. Look, you know, again, these news events at the moment usually would make a massive difference to 5 pips, but it's just not worth it. So, look, I wanted to test the waters and see. We're still not there yet. Gold now pulling back. Look, RSI perfect.
I think one, they want to scale back on a lot of these wage pressures that are in place, and two, I don't think they want to find themselves in a position to basically, you know, have to really sort of, you know, pound the table to find labor. I think all of these factors. I mean, there's a confluence of factors over the years that I think are forcing us down this path.
Tom Porcelli.
And again, just to be clear, it's happening already.
Of RBC. We've got to leave it there, unfortunately, Tom. Appreciate your time. Just on that breaking news, just to wrap up Tom's thoughts there, it's easy for every Fed official to talk tough on inflation when the labour market is humming. That could change later this year. That could break the groupthink. Let's get back to that top story. Twitter in the pre-market with a little bit of a pop off the back of the news from Twitter that Elon Musk will get a seat on the board of directors. TK, that news out just moments ago.
What do the others do? How does Meta, Facebook, Instagram, how do they respond to that? How does somebody as ginormous as Microsoft or Apple at above 2.9 trillion, how do they respond to this? I mean, this is not just about Twitter.
Well, let's start with objectives and go back to a tweet of Elon Musk on March 26th when he said this. Given that Twitter serves as the de facto public town square, failing to adhere to free speech principles fundamentally undermines democracy. What should be done? Now, is that the conversation that's going to take place on the board of directors now, Lisa, within the company? And when he says what should be done, what can be done? What will they do?
Well, and to your point, how transparent can they be about who and who is not allowed to be on Twitter? We talk about, of course, former President Trump, also other Republican lawmakers in particular. At what point, though, have we already been having that debate on the boards? At what point does he bring sort of the swing vote in allowing more free speech and allowing more versus the argument on instigating some sort of violence or instigating certain types of misinformation. I mean, these are the other arguments on the other side. I'm really not weighing in. I do think that the idea of free speech is front and center. This highlights it in a much more poignant way.
Just tenure out to 2024. What's the Dorsey influence here? I mean,
RSI 73. You can see we're against blue zones. When these blue zones are in place, they come automatically on the Axe trading system. And obviously, we know we're looking to trade the reverse. These are lots of support, heavy support on our points of interest grid, and the blue zones, historical areas of support that you haven't. So you haven't got to look left. This is doing all for you. And the same with resistance. We've got heavy resistance, so we're trapped between this zone at the moment. I was seeing if gold will actually come back to our trend line or our neutral support, our daily pivot zone right here.
It is about the fundamentals
and now we'll be switching obviously to the US-30 as well. We'll keep an eye on gold and see if we do get a sell, but we're going to be switching on to US-30 for the open. And then we'll go back to gold for the news. The market composite is in an hour and 3. And then we've got the ISM, and then we're done. That's the end of it. So again, I just don't know how these are going to affect the markets any more than the balance of trade. It's not even been reported on Bloomberg. This is how
as far as revenue generation, some people are speculating
Elon Musk being a board of directors on Twitter is the big news.
That also includes an edit button. I mean, basically, the more viewers you have, the more you can play with different revenue streams that potentially could stick.
And the engagement of the user base, the existing user base, is something they all want. I'm not totally dismissing the edit button story. I'm just saying for Elon Musk, he's been pretty clear that it's about something else.
Of course, I'm saying, though, that the idea of crowdsourcing news and that basically this is just accelerating that. And we're having that argument about free speech that a lot of news organizations had in boardrooms quietly. And now we're having it very publicly in a 2022 way.
If he can add the value to this company that he's added to Tesla, then we've got quite a story in front of us. Twitter right now up by a little more than 5% in the pre-market, Tom.
John, headlines quickly. EU, van der Leyen, EU imposing import ban from Russia. I don't know what that means, but it's a big deal.
Need to raise pressure on Russia. What kind of import ban from Russia, Tom? You got any more detail than that?
Nope, that's all I got.
Okay.
But it's moving. I want to say to people on a Tuesday, the story in Europe is moving in real time because of those photos.
The EU to ban Russian and Russian-operated vessels from EU ports. Just getting that headline crossing.
Yeah.
As we get more headlines, we'll bring them to you from New York.
This is where you're going to keep your ear to the ground. EU imposing import ban from Russia. All that's done. Push gold higher against this heavy resistance now. We're watching the real news and you expect things. Because traders are always wondering, why does something move? No matter what time frame you want. Obviously we see more action on a 3-minute time frame. More price action, and you always want a reason why things go up, go down, go against you, whatever, you know. So the world news is the main at the moment.
The weapons are part of a $300 million package of military assistance announced last week by the Defense Department.
US-30 just caught in a range because obviously it's not open yet. We've got 45 minutes to go, so it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out as well. Again, we're going to jump in on the RSI, whether it's a buy or sell. No preconceptions of which direction it's going to be, obviously. Even with, again, with the Russian thing, you think it might be a sell, it might not. Gold is now against the heavy resistance zone. Look. Whether this move was to do with balance of trade, who knows, because it wasn't even registered on Bloomberg or CNN. So we've got an hour to go for the market composite. On Forex Factory, they're just highlighting the ISM. Trade balance is really a medium one for them. Final services is next.
At Bloomberg, I realized that I had an opportunity to
size 77 now. As it gets, if it gets up to that 85, then we're looking for a reversal. Still wanting to buy, look, and it's hitting a double top out on here. Look at this. Yeah, our previous 1933. And it's going to top out to that 1933.
Space, you probably think one space agency that travels under the radar is ESA, which is surprising considering
It's been retesting that kind of 1930 level for the last, half a day or so. So let's see if it breaks this and goes higher. So a big rejection, up 81 now. So now really at this point, when it gets this high, I only look to take reversals coming out the zone. Post this into the group.
If we want to have successful human missions to Mars, we are going to have to learn to live and work off-world in a different way. The place where we are going to learn to do that is on the moon.
Can ESA help humanity take its next giant leap?
This is a market that over the past few weeks has made it clear it wants to go higher. It got a little spooked by the idea that geopolitical tensions are rising.
Yeah, US-30 is beautifully in a range, and when it gets to the open, we're going to be looking at 100, 10 pips either way is what I'm looking for. Should be perfect if it stays in this range at the moment. So we'll keep focused on gold.
Soaring energy prices and a short supply of key chemicals that produce.
See, you've got the news backed up here.
Are sending pig,
Rise, SMs.
Even human waste is in demand as farmers hunt for alternatives. Fertilizer helps increase crop yields.
You can see how much moisture is held into this. It's a lot of organic material into the compost, so it breaks down, the manure and the straw breaks down into a friable mix.
See if we can get any sells on gold before the open. See if this RSI is going to come out of that zone. Ready? What I like to see is the RSI come out of the zone here at 75, then go back in. That's usually a good re-entry point. Once it gets above 80 and gets towards that 85, 83, always looking for a slight correction as it's tested the area here and here. Yeah, look, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. And just the news, the bad news impending is what could force it higher. But it looks like we're going to get a push down. I'm going to go in for maybe 110 pips on gold. Just watch this whilst Bloomberg catches up. We'll see where we are. Let's listen to them.
See some upside in yields, especially as we see ongoing hawkishness from the Fed. When you look at that 40-year downtrend in that 10-year yield, I'm a believer we can't yet break out of it. That means we're probably near the peak in this rate move.
Frances Donald on with us, really spirited today. She's a Montreal Canadiens fan, which means she's been betting on the Canadiens and losing money this year. We are going to digress right now. We're going to have a chart from Kriti, and then we've got a very special guest coming up. Kriti Gupta, what do you have today?
Yeah, Tom, let's talk about the Dow Transports Index here, because as we talk about where the stock market is really headed, some people are looking at the Dow Transports Index as simply a beacon of what potentially may come. The idea that as you start to see airlines, shipping, railroads even kind of drop, the index has dropped 7.3% in the last 4 days. Is that a sign of what's to come in the S&P 500? That's the bear case, Tom. Let me give you the bull case very quickly. Since 2010, 124 times the Transports Index has fallen over 5% in just 1 week. 85 of those times, the S&P 500 was higher a month after. In other words, that translates to about 2 out of 3 times the S&P 500 rallied a month after this big drop in transport. So there's your bull case. That's my chart of the day.
Kriti Gupta, thank you so much. The bull case led by growth here recently. This is a joy, and for those of you on Bloomberg Radio, it's an iconic voice from WJR of Detroit, and long before that, Michael Barr holding the record for seeing 10 consecutive Toledo Mud Hen games. He joins us right now. Bloomberg Business of Sports. Michael Barr, you and Bloomberg Business of Sports are iconic at all this, and you've put action from your words.
81, still hanging around that 81 zone, so we're still waiting. As soon as we see a dip down, we could be in for a sell. Then we'll wait to take the reversal back up again or further continuation. The areas I sent to the group yesterday, the areas I always try and avoid, what I call the no man's zone, is this zone in between neutral and that's the kind of area where I won't trade. You know, I mean, where the RSI is in this zone, if it's getting up towards here and here, we know what we're looking for: buys, continuation, or reversals. Here we're looking for, again, for a continuation in a different direction or a bounce out, but this no man's zone is where things can be dangerous, so that's why I try and avoid trading. Okay, so let's see if we're going to get some sells. RSI is coming down to 80. Finish my coffee.
To talk about the betting aspect of it, how much have
I wonder if we can get 10. Be nice.
which were kind of the mainstay of a lot of office pools.
Blue zone formed, you see. We're looking at about there, just interest. If it does,
winning, which you will next disclose, Michael Barr.
Well, what happens a lot of times is that
some good zones now of resistance.
Used to have the bracket, and everybody, that was the only way you could, like, you know, get some money playing this. But then when online betting came along, you could do parlays, you could do just bet on a single game, you could take the odds, you could take the points. I mean, it changed the whole landscape of how you approach betting. No longer do you have to go to Las Vegas anymore just to go and place a bet.
So let's talk about process here. Do you just basically come up with a list and then a dart board and just throw the darts? I mean, what's your process here?
I like to work from the inside out. My first choice was Kansas to win the whole thing.
Really?
And I started with Kansas, and then I started going on down. I had Duke and Kansas going in the finals. And then, unfortunately for Coach K, he went out with North Carolina. By the way, what a brilliant career for Coach K. Yeah. I am just, you know, I had a chance to meet the guy one time. And just a
still hanging on. RSI still 81. But again, you don't do anything. There's no move either down or up at the moment on gold in the holding pattern. We're coming towards 30 minutes before the NY Open. Check the news again on here, but there should be no update yet. Same.
And I want to bring you and Sweeney together with the new media, the new technology. Does March Madness just get bigger? How does it change?
As long as we don't have
4 minutes to the market composite final results.
It's going to get
March.
bigger and bigger. And give a shout
US-30 ranging. We'll leave that alone to watch. Goals decide to push up. Look, 82 now. The interesting one.
And all of this I attribute to online gambling. Because now you can make a
what we could see is a reversal on the open. That would be nice to trade that as well. So we're going to go on the US-30, but we could be looking for sells on gold if this is pushing up higher and higher before break that previous zone. Look, 1934 now.
Has this industry grown? I mean, just to give a sense of how much momentum there has been, especially as everyone was at home with their checks and nowhere to go.
Well, let's go back to when the Supreme Court said, okay, you can have online gambling now. And this was before the COVID era. So it started growing right there. That was like about 5-something years ago. That's when it started to grow. And it was gonna take off big time then. And then all of a sudden we hit the COVID era and there was nothing to bet on except marble racing. And so then it, came back. I mean, it was just the coaches love seeing 70,000 people in the stands watching the game, which means, hopefully this is the post-COVID era and we can continue on.
Right. You know, our people talk to you, Michael.
83 now.
TV, and we welcome all of you.
Good to watch. Good to see how gold's moving.
Said the only way to get bar back is to talk Tigers. Austin Meadows to the Tigers.
Keep watching this.
Are the Detroit Tigers destined this year?
Well, let's calm down. They're probably going to be 50.
Make 500 ball this
they're going to play
year,
500 ball. But again, we are rebuilding. And I've always loved I know we're rebuilding every year.
Yeah.
But I mean, I love the Tigers. You know, anything from Detroit, I'm a big fan of. So I wish we had that era where we were in the World Series against the Giants, because we had a pitching staff that was second to none. I'm
Michael
so sorry
Bart,
to see it.
thank you so much. Bloomberg Business and Sports, of course, all he does for Bloomberg surveillance each and every day. Lisa, I think we've got to regroup with the tape. It's a little soggy.
Yeah.
But am I right, Lisa, that the headlines from Europe have just taken over this day?
Yeah, in particular from European Commissioner President Ursula von der Leyen coming out and saying that the EU is working on more sanctions, including oil imports. This is a big deal, talking about how they need to raise pressure on Russia, talk about the potential for having some sort of import ban. We've already talked about the coal issues. We've talked about the vessels issues.
Yeah.
These are all sort of edified in addition to semiconductors, machinery. Again, the key issue is oil, and she does say they are working on more sanctions having to do with oil imports. So really kind of giving some steam to this feeling that coal was sort of a beginning, an entree in some of the hairier areas.
It's going to be interesting to see. And that I looked at Amsterdam, Rotterdam coal. You can do that on the Bloomberg this morning, up about 400% from the quiet of long ago. So that'll be important to see. Futures -11. Dow futures we do for John Farrow. Dow futures -79, and the VIX with that 18 close yesterday. Really extraordinary. Comes back a little bit, 19.26. What am I focused on? Swiss franc. It is stronger Swiss franc. A bit of a surprise there, but a real interesting dynamic with Euro Swiss. That's for something for global Wall Street to watch. To watch and listen to, Esther George will join in the 10 o'clock hour on Bloomberg Markets. An important, a timely interview. Please stay with us. This is Bloomberg. Good morning.
Here we go, RSI 80. This could be the start. Is this the start of the little pullback, little correction down to 1931? And see if we can get a cheeky little trade away. We've got 30 minutes till the open. Seeing the curl, as soon as you see these steep V's on the RSI, it's always a good indication of a reversal. Yeah, look. Here. In there. The kind of trades that if you are an RSI lover like I am, try and get in on, watch, and even reversing out of zones like here. So I look for the steeper the V, more momentum is expected. That was like 1, 2, 3, 4. Look, so you could have jumped in there, there, yeah. Aggressive, of course, because he always can reverse on you, but when you see that pattern, I'm always looking for those patterns. Moment you see with this one, there's no sharp that's stuck. Obviously it can repaint and change, but you want to see it stick. And then if you miss that candle here, you'd have been on this one here. Nice little reversal candle indicator there, and then where you go. That's a good thing about the Axe trading system. There's you can personalize the way you want to use it with my help and stuff. I can show you different ways to use it and ways to get in on a trade, exit as well. Gold's looking to push up now to 1935. There you go, look, 1935, it's crossed.
Need to catch up? This is Bloomberg Wall Street Week. I'm David Weston. We've got the information and insights.
David, you just hit the nail right on the head.
From businesses most influential and instrumental.
And that's the way you run good risk management.
We need to invest in
our systems.
Bloomberg Wall Street Week premieres Friday with replays all weekend on Bloomberg Television and Radio.
BSO Now is your online home for weekly Boston Symphony Orchestra and Boston Pops performances. See new concerts that go behind the scenes, plus acclaimed archival concerts. Visit bso.org/now, where the music plays on. BSO sees
It just shows you how, at the moment, trading just the economic calendar alone is still risky. Never guarantee your house on anything, you know what I mean? But I'm just saying, usually these would go the way we went, and they go the opposite way. A lot of that is down to what's happening in the world, and the results aren't strong enough. That's the thing you got to think about as well. You look at all these results, and this was something major in the economic calendar to be a big move now.
Bonds are lower, yields are higher, equities are a little bit softer this morning. Good morning to you all. Equity futures down about 1/3 of 1%. The countdown to the open starts right now.
We go. See what we can get in on US-30. US-30's just decided to drop a little bit. Look, nice pattern, nice bear signal came out, was accurate. You can get a signal since. There we go, bull signal there. Cheeky win, bear one.
Live from New York City, we begin with the big issue. Pricing in a growth slowdown.
This is the markets readjusting.
The inversion of the yield curve. This melt up in yields.
It's a pretty strong signal that we are facing some kind of significant slowdown.
When the curve gets flat or inverted,
it's telling you that the economy is strong today, but it may not be in the future.
I am very impressed and quite honestly surprised about how resilient equities have been.
The equity market's balancing. Yes, there's some greater risk of recession.
It's telling us one other thing.
There's also a possibility that things continue on for another 12, 18, 24 months.
It's too early to sound an alarm bell on a recession.
What the yield curve is discounting is higher odds of a growth slowdown next year.
Within a year's time, you're going to see that the impact of the flatter curve on the broader economy.
Joining us now is BlackRock's Kay Moore, PGIM's Greg Peters, and Morgan Stanley's Dan Skelly. Kay, to begin with you, to what degree do you think we are pricing in a growth slowdown in the more economic sensitive parts of this equity market?
Yeah, so John, listening to those comments, and of course from two of my colleagues, Jeff and Russ, I tend to agree that the equity market has been probably a little bit more resilient than many people would have expected, particularly given the rate adjustment and given this sort of myriad of challenges we're facing, whether it's inflation or geopolitics, or this rate adjustment that we'll have through the balance of the year. That said, I think the real show me moment is going to be as companies start reporting first quarter. And I say this because not just what they did in the first quarter, but as management teams really discuss with the market their expectations around margins and cost control, how they're adjusting their supply chains, how they're dealing with higher energy input costs, I think is really going to set the tone for the direction of the market over the course of the next 6 months.
What are you expecting, Kate?
I'm expecting actually that you're going to see a massive bifurcation within the market. You're going to have these companies that have controlled their costs, that are not facing major labor challenges, perform fairly well, but the bar is pretty high. It's not just what consensus earnings are. I think we need to not just beat those earnings, but again, have reaffirmed guidance from management teams and strong conviction from those leaders that they're going to be able to weather all of these challenges I was just outlining.
Dan Skelly, growth is a big theme for you and the team at Morgan Stanley. Keith Lerner of Truist picking up on some of the weakness we're seeing already in the transports, not just there, in the home builders, in the financials over the past few days, semiconductors, yield curve inverting too. Dan, are you expecting to see more of this in the months to come?
Good morning, John. We are, and we would say, look, certainly as it relates to the curve signal and some of these other subsectors weakening, as you mentioned, financials, transports. Look, we are on alert. We are not yet sounding the total alarm just yet. And the history is, look, post a yield curve inversion, markets actually tend to do fine for the next 12 to 18 months. But it's all about that rotation intra-market, right? It's all about going up in quality, favoring some of the more defensive sectors, and to Kate's point, certainly favoring pricing power as well. I'll add just one last thing as it relates to the global equity perspective. Over the last 6 or 8 weeks, everyone's been talking about how resilient the U.S. equity market has been. But consider this. We've seen more lockdowns in China with Shanghai. We've seen more repercussions and ramifications likely in terms of Russia, Ukraine on Europe and a potential slowdown there. So the U.S. equity market really did get a bid because it was probably the best relative bet globally.
Greg Peters, your thoughts on all of this, the prospect of a harder landing later this year?
Yeah, so I think the timing is really tricky, Jonathan, but the outcome is pretty clear in my mind, which is the economy will absolutely slow. The number of rate hikes being priced in and what the Fed is telling you, and given the strength of the labor market, all point to they really have to hit the brakes hard here in trying to quell this inflation story. So to me, it's just a matter of time, and it's inevitable in my mind.
Greg, hit the brakes hard. What does that mean? 50 basis point hikes through 4 meetings like Citi. What are you thinking about? Go hard on QT?
Well, all the above, right? I mean, you think about, the March meeting and then the subsequent meetings. I mean, the rhetoric has just changed. So I think 50 is definitely on the table. I think another 50 is also on the table. But they are going to be data dependent. And I think the strength of the payroll numbers last week and the revisions give them ample cover to be much more aggressive. And as far as QT is concerned, I think the markets are dismissing that as a risk or even part of the tightening phase. So to me, a policy mistake, as I've been saying for
There's
quite
that.
some time.
Let's keep an eye on the intraday.
Part of the market is dismissing that. And if you expect a so-called policy mistake, how are you expressing that market-wise as you allocate capital right now?
Switching to US-30 for the open.
Markets are largely dismissing. The shape of the curve, I think, directionally is telling you the story. That,
Gold pushing higher and higher and higher.
Slowing
1935 now.
But I think there's so much momentum in the risk.
RSI is 84, so this really is overbought, what I class as true overbought. So yeah, we're just waiting for reversals on this,
You're dancing between the raindrops, and it's going to be really difficult.
which we could get on the open or push higher, but we're on heavy resistance now. Is it going to break this zone?
In early May, Chairman Powell told us to look towards the minutes of the last meeting to get some detail on balance sheet reduction. So tomorrow we'll do just that. Let's get to Mike McKee for a little
So
bit
we're
more.
going up.
Mike.
We can zoom out. We can see
John. I'm trying to figure out
previous levels.
dancing
See?
among the raindrops metaphor there. But you listen to Greg's view.
1940 then and wait.
Diamond says he pities the Fed
19
because, the
plus.
Wall Street view is they are behind the curve and
Watching
they
on this
are
here
going
and
to
see
break
it
something by
going to
raising
push
rates.
higher or we're going to get a
But
reversal.
at the same time, you've still got COVID. You've still got the
US-30 is back in the range, back in the pocket. Crisscross trend lines.
in a year or
We're just
two.
going to wait for that.
So what do? If there's any pushback, it may come today from Esther George, who is a voting member of the Open Market Committee this year. We'll be talking to her at the top of the next
And
hour.
we've got the
Get her view on
composite
idea
PMIs coming up.
whether you do 50 and
Again, we'll try and trade that, but we're not.
or whether you take a
Nothing's a guarantee.
stance. At the same time, we're
That's
also
why we love
watching
trading.
for Lael Brainerd. She's the only member of the board who hasn't spoken since the last meeting, and we don't know where she comes down on this. It will be very interesting. Sometimes she takes some positions that seem slightly opposed to where the chair is. And then, of course, finally, tomorrow we get the Fed minutes, and the Fed minutes are going to be crucial to this whole idea of QT. Do they have any clues to what kind of regime they're going to use to shrink the balance sheet? Is it going to be the same as last time with caps, maybe $100 billion instead of the $60 billion they used last time? And do they have any plans to sell anything along the way? So an interesting week for members of the market because they're going to get some clues to what their market is going to look like over the next couple of months.
An interesting day for you as well, Mike McKee, catching up with Esther George of the Kansas City Fed. Looking forward to that a little bit later. Mike McKee with the Kansas City Fed President, Esther George, 10 a.m. Eastern Time in about 43 minutes. Mike, it will be fantastic to watch you with a Fed official once more, especially ahead of these Fed minutes, just 24 hours away. There is a more constructive view on the outlook for this market, and it comes from JP Morgan's Marko Kolanovic. He writes the following: the risk-reward in equities is not as poor as it's currently fashionable to believe. He goes on to say, the Fed repricing might be closer to the end, and headline inflation will mechanically peak soon, The start of Fed tightening should not be seen as a negative.
RSI 77 is what we like to see. Look at that king. Look at the beautiful move on the RSI.
Morgan Stanley comes out with
RSI 76. This could be it. This could be our chance to nip in and grab something. Let's have a look.
Take those 2 points that come from Marco and his team.
The price action, the candle's small.
If you can. The Fed repricing might be closer to the end, 1, and headline inflation will mechanically peak soon, 2, and all of this as a reason to stay long equities. Your thoughts?
Sure. And look, what I would say is there are certain factors, hopefully the normalization of COVID with some labor supply coming back into the market, that will depress some of those inflationary pressures near term. But let's face it, you got to offset that with some of the issues we've seen the last 6 weeks with this horrible conflict and tragedy in Ukraine. Russia is one of the biggest exporters of fertilizer in the world. And so we haven't even seen some of the food inflation pressures start to show up globally there. And we think that'll be more of an issue in the second half. So, there are all these cross currents and offsetting factors to consider. It's a very fast moving market at the moment, obviously. When you think about it, being long equities broadly, in our opinion, is not the way to go. You want to be more selective. You want to be more active. And we would also take issue with the fact that the Fed might be closer to the end. We think the Fed is really just beginning to start its tightening regime. So again, that augurs for being more quality focused, a bit more defensively biased at the moment. Look, we're at 4,600 or so on the S&P. We think that's the top of the range, given this interest rate move.
We'll keep building on this. Dan Skelly, Greg Peters, Kate Moore. Great lineup going into the opening bell. One stock we're looking at this morning, Twitter in the pre-market up more than 8%. Jack Dorsey weighing in. I'm really happy Elon is joining the Twitter board. He cares deeply about our world and Twitter's role in it. He goes on to say, Parag and Elon both lead with their hearts and they will be an incredible team. One of the many movers we're watching ahead of the opening bell. Let's get to Abby for more. Hey, Abby.
Hey, John. Well, yeah, this is really pretty impressive, this move that we're seeing in Twitter. Another big update. Right now, Twitter in the pre-market poised to go above the 200-day moving average. That's a fancy way of saying the long-term buyers are impressed here. And that's important because up until yesterday, this stock over the last year had been down more than 30%. Now it's down less than 20%, of course, on the not so surprising news that Elon Musk is now joining the board. So his 9.2% stake, not so passive as expected. And of course, he will not own more than 14.9%. But again, the stock is now technically stronger. So it's going to be interesting to see whether or not his board appointment and his stake brings other big investors to the company and on to becoming investors. Tesla, after yesterday's big 5.6% move up, it is now down ever so slightly. And of course, that move was on record deliveries. But it seems that everybody's very happy about this Musk factor for Twitter, John.
Never made sense calling this a passive stake, did it? All of yesterday, Abby.
Agreed. It really didn't, because he's clearly probably one of the least passive people out there, really a visionary and motivates people, inspires people, and seems to be doing the same thing for Twitter. It's very interesting, actually, in fact, that Michael, one of the biggest bears on Tesla, Michael Burry, known for The Big Short, he's saying he's very excited for Elon Musk to be on Twitter and they could even save America. Big words there, his opinion, but yes, people very excited for that.
Abby, thank you. About 20 minutes away from the opening bell, we'll catch up with Ed Ludlow on the West Coast with a little bit more on this story. The stock up by almost 9% in early trading. Coming up on the program, the EU hitting Russia with fresh sanctions.
This guy is brutal, and what's happening in Bucha is outrageous. I'm seeking more sanctions, yes. I'll have time to announce that to you.
That conversation up next.
Everyone you meet in Port Harcourt has stories about what they call black soot, caused by the manufacturing and consumption of these fuel products in the illegal refineries.
Oil theft, known as bunkering, and the refining of its spoils is worsening the damage from decades of fossil fuel exploitation, creating one of the world's most severe ecological disasters.
Our sacred forests, our homes have to give way to oil wells, and no one gets much benefit.
Imagine a resident of Port Harcourt who inhales this soot every second in 24 hours, 7 days a week, 30 days in the month, and for years now, we are dying slowly but surely, and our lifespan is reducing every day.
It's really a reminder, isn't it, just how sensitive the markets are to any commentary about trade. We did see some pressure on the yuan, we did see some pressure on the futures. That is now being reversed.
Stocked early enough all these precious materials you were just mentioning, and we were on the lucky side that our prognosis was spot on in a way, forecasting what kind of material we would need and what quantity we would need.
You may remember I got criticized for calling Putin a war criminal. Well, the truth of the matter, you saw what happened to Vuka. This warrants him, he is a war criminal. I'm seeking more sanctions, yes. I'll have time to announce that to you.
The President of the United States there, the EU following up with more sanctions. The EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen saying the following this morning. Today we are proposing a fifth package of sanctions. She goes on to say an import ban on coal from Russia worth €4 billion per year, cutting another important revenue source for Russia. She adds to that a full transaction ban on 4 key Russian banks, among them VTB, the second largest Russian bank. This news coming in just moments ago. Specific new import bans worth €5.5 billion, targeted measures such as a ban on participation of Russian companies in public procurement in EU, and exclusion of all financial support, EU or national, to Russian public bodies. And finally, this tweet storm, if we can call it that, a thread out on Twitter, ends with this. We are also proposing further listings of individuals. We are also working on additional
size 69.
oil imports and
We're just watching, seeing. We've got about 10 minutes to go to the open. So we'll let gold roll and see if we are going to get a drop on the open with gold. But at the same time, we're going to switch to US-30 now for the last. We're going to watch this, and we're going to enter in the RSI on this. It's going to be a buy or sell. Who knows? Let's see.
Let's just run through the numbers. And honestly, the first takeaway that I would have from this, by the way, is that they finally broke into the energy. Remember, this had been a question mark whether or not they would dare to go into energy. Now we see that they do it for coal. Now, overall, if you add up all the numbers and everything that has been announced now, we see that there will be an import ban of about 10 billion euros worth of imports from Russia, and another 10 billion euros of exports going to Russia. The key takeaway, of course, is coal. From what I understand, buyers will be given 3 months to wind down coal contracts signed with Russia, and after that they have to exit the position and they won't be able to sign new ones. The other thing, of course, to me that is key here is that von der Leyen says there could be more sanctions to come. Now, in terms of the debate today from European officials, it is clear that there was no consensus for oil. At the start of the day, there had been perhaps conversations that oil could be included here. It is clear now, based on this announcement, that today was not the day, but nonetheless, I hear this conversation is ongoing, and some countries will continue to push so that we do see also bans on Russian oil going into the European Union.
AMH is the first step. It's a small one into the energy arena. Coal. Do they go a step further to gas, to crude? Where's the US on this situation at the moment?
Well, there are some European countries, Jonathan, that are already there. Take Lithuania, very tiny, but they went that step further unilaterally, not altogether as the European Union. The United States already cut off Russian imports, but from
RSI lovely in the 50 zone on the RSI. Exactly where we need to be sat before an open, so we know we're going to get a move. And like I say, we've got the market composite coming up in 25 minutes, and then the ISM manufacturing to end. Whether we trade these or not, we'll watch and see what happens. Next day, we'll just go to this zone, wait to see what gold is doing. It's ranging now. Let's pan this out.
What are we looking looking at a month down the line. Potentially, you're going to have more countries.
Are we going to get this for the Open? Thinking.
Saying we will no longer accept Russian oil and gas.
Anne-Marie, down at DC, thank you. Maria Tadeo in Brussels. Breaking the energy.
We did get a lovely cheeky sell on that. Look, what we get 686. That was great.
For the European situation and how you're playing this story. And I know that's an unfortunate phrasing of mine, so forgive me for that. But I'm just thinking about how you might be pulling back from energy given the rally we've already seen.
Yeah, we're actually not pulling back from energy at this point. You know, over the last 3 years, we have been mostly underweight and had pretty low allocations to the sector.
Points.
But of course, over the last
A little spike down.
6 to 8 months, we had been increasing our exposure.
See if there's going to be a bigger move.
In the last 3 years, we're not looking to reduce despite the phenomenal run, because what initially inspired us to add to energy equities had been the supply-demand balance and how much sort of traditional resource was going to be needed in order to make it through the energy transition. That story is still intact. And of course, we have additional fuel on the fire from this conflict in the Ukraine. So we don't see
going on US-30
better in the near term. Of course, we would change our view if we heard from a lot of energy companies they were going to start pumping a tremendous amount. But that's not the story we're hearing at all. The capital discipline is very much in play across most of the major energy equities. The second part of your question, though, John, was how are we investing and how are we playing here, in addition to the energy companies explicitly? We're also looking at
gold.
That are energy
again, that blue zone's disappeared, so it could be, again, best to bounce off this heavy resistance line. We just don't know. Just don't know if gold's going to go higher and US-30 is going to drop, or whether US-30 is going to pull up and gold's going to drop. I'm anticipating that, but we don't even know. That's the exciting thing. We just go with the trend direction. RSI 47, 48.
That benefit from higher prices and reduced capacity coming out of Russia.
Dan Skelly, can I throw that question at you as well, just in terms of the run we've seen in energy equities and where you and the team are at the moment on that story?
Sure, John. We've had a positive bias towards the sector for some time and continue to. Look, hopefully we're moving more towards some type of ceasefire or broader negotiation in Ukraine. And so you may not see that same parabolic move up that we've seen in the last several weeks, but there's still reasons to be long the space here. So number one, historically, as we start to dust off our late cycle playbook, it's been a space that's worked well within the latter phases of the late cycle, number one. Number two, when I think about Kate's point, look, we had dramatic capital pullback from the U.S. domestic sphere in the years leading up into COVID, and certainly the Russia-Ukraine supply issues have only made that more exacerbated. And then thirdly, look, in a world where volatility is going to remain elevated and where total returns at the index level are going to remain more muted, certainly versus the last 3 years, you're clipping a pretty positive dividend yield. I would just highlight it's the highest yielding sector in the S&P, yielding over 3%.
Greg Peters, just a final word from you on the credit side of things. Of course, the energy picture has been very supportive of what's happening.
Crude, I haven't traded oil for a while. Again, it's been so volatile. I love trading oil. Spreads have been crazy. So again, you just have to walk away from it. Same as gas. I got in on gas for a while. With all the news, the API, this would be a regular one that I trade, but not at the moment. A quick way to blow your account. Like I say, it's the hardest thing for any retail trader is trying to back away and decide when not to trade, because you always want to trade. The adrenaline, the rush, everything. It's that's what you live for. I've learnt from many losses to back away when things aren't right. Gold pushing. Look, going back into that zone, 75 for a re-enter on the buy. Could be cool.
Good morning. This is Bloomberg.
Good morning, Jonathan. Good morning. Open's coming up in 6 minutes or so.
When you think space, you probably think one space agency that travels under the radar is ESA, which is surprising considering what the European Space Agency has achieved and how vital it is to the global space industry.
We've collaborated with pretty much everybody who is involved in space exploration.
We've got 5 minutes to go.
ESA wants to be a leading force in furthering humanity's mission into space.
Commander Ground, do you copy? Copy.
If we want to have successful human missions to Mars, we are going to have to learn to live and work off-world in a different way. The place where we are going to learn to do that is on the moon.
Can ESA help humanity take its next giant leap?
Five minutes away from the opening bell, equities just a little bit softer, down 0.25% on the S&P, on the Nasdaq down 0.33%. The equity story not doing much, but in the bond market we are doing something. The yield curve through much of this morning a bit steeper. Your 10-year up 6 basis points, your 2-year up over
30. So zooming in, just watching the RSI. It's looking like a sell, but could whatever the, you see these nice kinks, these moves. Look, this is what we're looking for.
For Twitter, there is nothing passive about the stake of Elon Musk. He's getting a seat on the board. That stock is up again by almost 9%, up 8.9% in the pre-market going into the opening bout. That's the price action this morning. Let's get you some morning calls. First up with Goldman Sachs, downgrading First Solar to underperform, highlighting mounting headwinds, including rising prices. That stock is down by 3.64% to $80.90. Next up, Wedbush downgrading Starbucks to neutral, $91 price target, seeing a lack of catalyst for the foreseeable future. That stock is down to $86.53 and negative 1.77%, now 1.63. Going into the opening bout. Your third and final call is MKM Partners downgrading Twitter to neutral, $49 price target, pointing to a fairly balanced risk-reward following Monday's 27% rally. Well, here's another pop, up by 8.73%.
Crazy.
Close to 9 percentage points higher going into the opening bout at 54.
3 minutes to go, team.
Twitter running for a second day, naming Elon Musk to its board of directors. That is up next.
We're focused on US-30. Let's say a support zone here is going to break that. We'll mark out our zone. Yeah, the breakout zone here, the dotted red line, where price, once it breaks this, a big move. So that could be our TP for the sell. And on the flip side, then we're looking at points of interest zone and the blue zone here. So these are our areas where we're looking to get in and out, where we can see reversals.
Soaring energy prices and a short supply of key chemicals that produce synthetic fertilizers are sending pig, cow and horse manure prices soaring. Even human waste is in demand as farmers hunt for alternatives. Fertilizer helps increase crop yields.
You can see how much moisture is held into this. It's a lot of organic material into the compost that breaks down. The manure and the straw breaks down into a friable mix that can be mixed into your soil in the ground and for growing a whole
1 minute to go.
Holds the nutrients in, holds the water in, and it really increases the kind of biodynamic profile of the soil.
The recent price spike could mean more farmers going organic for the long term.
Going to US-30. There we go. Get ready, everybody. Watch the RSI. Pointing down. That drop.
Front row, exclusive interviews with the most influential figures in finance. Lloyd Blankfein.
Deflation is a terrible thing. Inflation you could tolerate.
RSI reversing at RSI 26, 25, 27, 5. Beautiful drop.
Terminal, then on Bloomberg Television and Bloomberg.com. Front row, the best seats in the house for business's greatest minds. Why do the biggest names in business?
There's the open.
That is a great question.
It's a great question.
It's a great question. Great question.
Great question.
Great question.
Great question.
There's the King Cup I like to see. Look at that.
I'm glad you asked that.
Bloomberg Television, top experts.
The world can be a noisy place. Stock prices are set to soar. But what if under all the noise was opportunity?
31. Let's see. It's going to sitting on that zone. Beautiful spike.
And be empowered with capital.com.
3 nice sales already. Already $100. By pushing up now. Look. Get ready. It's going to push back down again.
On the year now, year to date, the S&P down about 3.9% on the S&P 500. This morning on the session, we come back a little bit, down 0.25% on the S&P. On the Nasdaq right now, down 59, negative 0.4%.
So pushing up 44, 45. Look at this, beautiful.
Yields are higher on a 10-year, much higher in fact, by 5 basis points. We're back away from session highs though. Your 10-year, 245, 244. 49 to be precise. In the FX market, the euro weaker by 1/10 of 1%. Euro dollar sub 110, 109.60.
See what we can get. We're watching gold as well.
Rate hike, it seems, dropping the word patient. Nothing patient about this Federal Reserve. They're ready to go 50 basis points, seemingly. Mike McKee coming up with Esther George of the Kansas City Fed in about
49. Look at this. This is the kink of the move I told you about. This is what we're looking for every time. Look, get them buys in.
On WTI.
Move this to here.
Energy stocks advanced by 0.4%. The S&P down about 0.2%. Financials on the
watch for the reversal.
1%. Early days with your movers. Here's Abby.
John, well, taking a look at all stocks other than Twitter, saving that for you and Ed Ludlow. Let's start out with the shares of.
Lucas been pretty swift today.
It is
giving these out, which is great.
It's popping higher as coal pops to a 13-year high, above $100 a ton for the first time since 2008. This, of course, in the possible European ban of Russian coal. The EU proposing
Gonna look for a buy, then a sell.
Coal imports, again, helping out Peabody and other coal companies. Mosaic, the fertilizer company, up 1.5%. This, of course, on another potential ban. The EU will place a cap on the import of potash. This is a material used in fertilizers and is widely purchased.
Will break, yes. I'd like to see the buy, stuff like that. Perfect.
Rallying as the company is saying it had its best week ever, busiest week ever, even pre-COVID. That clearly signals some end to the pandemic, at least right now. And Moderna, not surprisingly, down 3.2%.
Everyone was in on the buys on that.
The African Europe Union and COVAX have declined the ability to buy more Moderna vaccines, again, on the idea that the pandemic is coming to an end, at least right now, John.
Abby, thank you. You teed it up for us. Let's take a look.
We took one loss on that.
Is up by more than
16.
Up 8.63%. This is Elon Musk is named to the board of directors. Another day of gains. The former
Our execution was slow, but we're still up.
I'm really happy Elon is joining the Twitter board. He cares deeply about our world and Twitter's role in it. Bloomberg's Ed Ludlow joins us now from San Francisco for more. Morning, Ed.
Good morning, John. Up 8.
RSI 71, streaking away, beautiful.
It's the biggest two-day jump on record for Twitter. Shares trading at their highest level since November. What a turnaround story for a company that sort of languished at the bottom of the pile of social media stocks, apart from Meta, the parent company of Facebook. The terms are very clear. Elon Musk joins the board as a Class 2 director. He can only hold up to 14.9% in terms of a stake during his term as director and 90 days thereafter. And there was some interesting stipulation in the letter from Twitter CEO Parag Agrawal to Elon Musk dated April 4th. So you imagine last night that he can't go above that 14.9% using swaps or derivatives. Interesting because Elon Musk stepped down.
Great bull candle. Perfect, look, that entry there. Absolutely bang on.
Interesting timing, John. So now
So we've got to look for these, like I say, these beautiful V shapes.
Looking forward to working with him to effecting meaningful
Oh,
change on
there we go. We just got the buys again. We got $150 on that one on US-30. So on the buys,
What does the company need, John? Because if you look at the share price versus the average analyst 12-month price target, we've got some catching up to do, and you do wonder how many consecutive days to come street analysts will look at their price targets and think, how do we model this? How do you model the Elon
one hell of a breakout candle. If no one can see that, this is why we love trading the opens. That candle.
Interesting one, isn't it?
Can we talk about freedom of speech? I think the media and the user base obsessed with things like the edit button. We can come to that at another point. But freedom of speech is a big issue for Elon Musk, and I wonder how he's looking to reshape this organization.
Right, so let's go back to the facts. March 25th, he tweets that poll asking his users if the Twitter platform upholds the principle of free speech. The overwhelming majority of respondents said no. We found out on Monday...
That's NY Open bagged again and again. Look at this. Beautiful.
By that point. Then you go back to November, December of 2021 when Jack Dorsey stepped
This is why we do true scalping. Why wait around when you can catch moves like this? RSI is now 81, so obviously wait. I wouldn't be taking any more. Let's have a look at gold. What gold's doing? Gold's still pushing higher as well.
And at the time, many took that to mean not only that Elon Musk had a problem with
This round again, like I say, gold you expect to be lower, but not at the moment. Not with the way the news is. That's why I focus more on US-30 opens. RSI is 85, so we're looking for sells on gold now. Go look for a correction. Cool. Wait for this on US-30. We've got to get some sells on US-30.
Speak to people connected with this company. I wonder how hostile this might be. Dan Ives of Wedbush said this morning. Musk joining the Twitter board is a key signal that Twitter...
Wait for the RSI to cool down.
Situation. You've been going over the work from Dan Ives of Wedbush, not just today, but yesterday too. Do you think this remains the way it is, less hostile, or do you think it's bound to become more hostile, given we know he has a radically different view on what he thinks should be done here?
Yeah, I would note that a lot of analysts were very careful with the language they used, right, John? There's a difference between the word change and the word control. Whether you're trying to affect change in a company or affect control or change to the company's operations are two different things. And, you know, Elon Musk has Elon Musk factor. He has more than 80 million followers on Twitter. He's arguably the most prominent person on the platform right now. And he leads a vast following who hang on his every word. We know that from the behavior of retail investors for Tesla stock who will act based on what he says on the platform. So, you know, most of the street analysts seem to look at this and say, is he trying to make a real activist play like Elliott did to affect management change? We don't know what his rationale is. We don't know his psychology. But he may just be trying to influence the platform because it's one that he's so prominent on.
Ed, thank you. Stay close. No doubt we'll have more news on this in the days, hours, weeks, minutes, who knows, still to come. Ed Ludlow on the West Coast, Twitter up by a little more than 7%. Deutsche Bank and Matt Lazzetti. Here's one for you. Matt Lazzetti just shot me an email moments ago. Here's the quote from him. I'll read it out for you. We see the Fed's tightening beginning to materially slow growth in the second half of 2023. He goes on to say, our baseline forecast has negative quarters for growth in Q4 23 and Q1 24, consistent with a recession during that time. That right there from Deutsche Bank is a recession call. Kate Moore, recession calls are very hard to call. And very
what goes up must come down, remember that. We've got the news in
at the end of 23, the start of 24. Can you do anything with that, Kate?
6 minutes. This is this market composite PMI, see if it actually does anything or not.
If we potentially have a decline in growth by the end of 2023, and let's just say that is like 7 quarters away at this point, I don't want to be out of risk assets in the near term. And by the way, you know, there are some companies, and I would say particularly technology companies and technology-enabled companies that have...
You see how powerful the RSI can be when you read it. You know, we're down here on US-30. There it is, look, 27. There it was. Years before, and then boom. We'll see if we're going to get the curl. Going to get always a correction down to here.
So I don't want to lean out of the equity market in the near term with this prospect of slower growth or perhaps negative growth by the end of next year. And in the near term, I also want to really take a look at the technology companies that have been derated since November, but who have very strong prospects over the medium term. So, I heard Dan say earlier that, he was a little bit more cautious on overall equity risk. I think equities are still the best returning asset class over the course of 2022, even if we've had to take down our return assumptions meaningfully since 3 or 4 months ago.
Dan, your name was mentioned. I'll give it a chance to respond.
Yeah, a couple of comments. So first, I think the jobs market and the revisions we saw over the last week or so, typically the jobs market gives you a lead time of at least 4 quarters in advance. So we are certainly not seeing recession risk this year. Look, if the Fed goes ahead with all this tightening and we have more inflationary pressures as a function of Ukraine, is that going to result in a slowdown? Certainly in 2023, we think so, right? Maybe not a recession, but a more material slowdown. And against that backdrop, I would concur with some of Kate's thematic convictions. In our equity models, we've been buying some of the digital transformation plays in the last several months. We've been buying names like Rockwell Automation, Accenture, which is a play on digital transformation in every industry, SBAC, which is a tower play, connectivity and 5G. So look, either the Fed goes ahead with all the Fed tightening and it leads to more slowdown, which augurs for having some growth names in the portfolio, which get a bid in a lower growth environment, or the Fed front loads it in the next several months and then pulls back a bit. And in that scenario, you actually like some of the growth names as well, because that would imply a cap on where rates go.
Dan, what is it about the construction of the S&P 500 at the index level that you really don't like? I get that you've got picks elsewhere, but what is it about the index that you just don't like?
On this interest rate level at 2.5 on a 10-year, at 250 on equity risk premium, we're seeing very rich valuations. We're in the top decile of valuations at 19.5 times forward of the last, call it 30 or 40 years. So we are rich, certainly. The dominant part of the market is that mega cap FANG internet technology world, which has been kind of the tech theme of 2000 to 2016. As I just mentioned, we like certain tech themes, but we just wouldn't be in the mega cap space. We'd be a little bit further down the cap curve. The reality is once you get that big, as we all know, you are certainly more in the crosshairs of governments globally, okay? And so not only do you have law of large numbers as a headwind, you have some regulatory headwinds as well on the horizon.
Greg, I wanted to give you a chance to respond to that Deutsche Bank piece. And for those just tuning in, I go over the quote from Matt Lazzetti and the economics team at Deutsche Bank again. We see the Fed's tightening beginning to materially slow growth in the second half of 23. Their baseline forecast is now for 2 negative quarters of growth, Q4 23, Q1 24, consistent with the recession during that time. Now, Greg, I'll repeat the question I asked of Kate. How useful is a call like that? If I can guarantee you that, how would you position for it at the moment today?
Guaranteed, Jonathan, huh? I mean, it's not so binary, right? So it's about risk reward and scaling back. And so just because you have that as a kind of a terminal concern doesn't mean you
let's see what the PMI does. 1 minute to go. Predicted to be 58.5, 58.9. So better than expected.
You should be scaling back because the risk factor is higher. And so as you mentioned,
now whether this does create any more bullish momentum to US-30 or it goes to reverse, we don't know. Like I said, we're not entering in, we're we're looking for some kind of pullback off here. 83, let's see.
Whether that recession comes about in the second half of next year or not, risk reward is still against you.
When are you a buyer of the long bond, Greg? Are we there already?
We're getting close. I mean, the war in the Ukraine has really changed the inflation dynamic. So we were, looking for the same kind of mechanical, issues that were described before. That I think is really pushed out. So I think it's too soon, but you are creating value. And so we're thinking of it as a sequencing. So the risk side, that door is closing, and the duration side, that door is opening. And it's just a matter of not getting trapped in between both doors.
And just to be clear, I can't guarantee anyone anything. Greg Peters, Kane Moore, Dan Skelly, to the three of you, thank you guys, really appreciate it. Coming up on the programme, the EU proposing a ban on Russian coal.
We must step up pressure against Russia, and we must step up our support for Ukraine.
Yep.
That conversation up next.
So look at the markets at the moment. Still looking for some sells all around, probably gold and US-30 and all these bull runs. You know, what goes up must come down. It's just the way it is. The RSI 78, 79. Look, DAX has already pulled back. Look, 0.51. Dow Jones 3.1 as we're seeing at the moment. So still potential for a reversal. So this is quite good. Waiting for sells on gold. Here we go. Here's the result on the PMI. Let's see if it makes any difference or not. $58 is worse than expected, so therefore we should be looking for sales on US-30 and USD and buys on gold. And there you go. So I'll print that. So let's see if that continuation of what's going on.
Pfizer vaccine specifically neutralize the virus, but not as efficiently, because various studies showing that reduction up to 40-fold, meaning that a third dose is a must for it to successfully neutralize the variant. What we don't know is still that what are the effects of mix and matching between vaccines, and what are the capabilities of antibodies produced
MI.
mix and matching in neutralizing.
This is going to react. We can mark this on and see the reaction to the market. That's the best way to do it. Then you know next time. US-30 and gold sync together perfectly at the moment.
When you translate it to real world, the data changes. So it will be really good to
We're looking for a sell on US-30.
ability of antibodies from vaccines to neutralize this variant. Grateful here today.
Moment doesn't look it. At 83, it's high.
Phase 2 receptor as its main entry. It means that all of the vaccines which are designed with spike in mind still works. Imagine if it uses a different receptor other than ACE2. None of the vaccines would work today. So I think that is the best news that we got from all these studies which came recently, the past couple of days.
Bloomberg has enhanced search on the terminal to deliver what you need when you need it. Now, you can simply type phrases in everyday English in the command line. Compare financials, find people, analyze markets. You can enter phrases or ask questions. What do you want to know today? Ask a question or visit SearchGo to find answers now.
The European Commission is already preparing the next sanctions package, and I hope that member states will be able to...
Beautiful. Look at that curl on RSI. Not the same as the open. Just here, look at that V. Perfect.
Sanctions, so we must step up pressure against Russia, and we must step up our support for Ukraine.
The EU proposing a ban on Russian coal and exploring the
Top of 266 you could have grabbed on the sub. You had to be quick. Buy all the way. Let's see what this does now. If this is going to pull back from all the way back.
Damien Sasser of Bloomberg Intelligence joins us now for more. Damien, talk to me
Gold's
about
doing the same look. RSI 73.
some of their debt obligations and what's about to happen perhaps in the coming days and weeks.
Well, it hasn't been easy. I mean, they just had a $2 billion principal payment that was due on the 4th of April. What they were able to do was convince 75% of their creditors to take rubles instead of dollars for that debt. But the remaining 25%, 500 million to be exact, Jonathan, that's still held up with JP Morgan, so they have yet to make payment on that. And today's news that, U.S. banks won't be processing for the Russian sovereign is going to make things that much more challenging. So forget about that May 25th deadline for, receiving coupon payments. At this point, it's a matter of, can Russia actually make payments to its creditors logistically? And so that's where the focus is today. And really what this does is it puts the onus on Russian reserves. We know that Russian reserves peaked in February at $640 billion. It's now down to $600 billion as of the 25th of March. Of that, $300 billion is frozen, Jonathan. That leaves, what, 200 billion. 130 of that is gold. Another 65 billion is China. Go figure, you know where they're going for their liquidity.
Damien, you used the phrase there, you said logistically, and that's the conversation that you and I have been having for weeks now. It's not been about ability or willingness for that matter. Can they get the money from point A to point B, even if they've got the money and they want to send it? Can we talk a little bit about ability? What do we know about their ability to pay their debts, given what's about to happen to their economy?
Well, it seems that they have enough funds, certainly to get to the May 25th D-date that the U.S. government's kind of placed on, creditors to take in money. But, it's going to happen a lot sooner than that. In fact, the Credit Derivatives Determinations Committee has has to make a ruling on whether Russian railways actually defaulted, whether or not that was a credit event. They missed their 10-day grace period. They had money that was due on the 25th. So that could set off a whole range of different things, Jonathan. Remember, there's a lot of credit default swaps out there.
RSI 77 coming out of that zone.
41 billion to be exact.
We're looking at.
Money that needs to change hands, and once that process
We've got another 10 minutes for the stream, and we've had a good successful session. We've got 9 minutes to the ISM. Just want to see if this is also worse, in which case hopefully get some kind of push down on gold and US-30, so we can grab some sells. Ranging around, it's got a blue zone form, so again, the news, it really didn't have to do anything. Look, I'm saying usually you would be 100, we used to guarantee pretty much 100 points of 10 pips on everything, but not at the moment. It's all good, all bad, hasn't done anything to the markets. Skittish over Russia, Ukraine.
Looks like it's about to be crossed because
while the news is bad, then gold traditionally will go high as a safe haven. We all know that.
Led by Germany, who are very wary about sanctions on energy because they
Put that down as a trade for a sell on US-30, that's for sure.
But pressure is built, and now it looks like it's about to happen. They're going to start with coal, and coal, although it doesn't have quite the same prominence as oil and gas in the conversation, it's significant. I mean, Russia is the biggest supplier of coal to the EU. The EU is by far the biggest. It buys about.
We've managed to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 7 trades from the open, and we just took the one loss, and we got 7 in pounds, £7, 42, 9, 12, 48, and 50, and a loss of 17. So pretty good for an open.
Of course, it's the big one. It's now part of the conversation. I don't think it's for this sanctions round necessarily, but the fact that it's on the table, I think, is also very significant.
Well, could you help us understand the numbers, the level of dependence that the Europeans have on Russian crude, and how much Russian oil has actually come offline over the last few months?
So it's one of the biggest suppliers of crude oil into Europe, and not just crude oil. I think it's very important for people to understand that it supplies a huge amount of refined products, principally diesel. I mean, countries like the UK were getting a third of their diesel from Russia before the war, and that's a pinch point. But for Germany, it has real impact because Germany is at the end of the Druzhba pipeline, which is an oil pipeline bringing more than 1 million barrels a day of oil into Europe. The concern for Germany is if they don't have that oil, Berlin will find it very hard to get any fuel at all. The refinery there won't be able to produce gasoline or diesel, and they need time to work on logistical alternatives. I think the Germans will say, even if this is the direction of travel they want to get to, they cannot do it overnight. The logistical challenges are very great. It would cause far too much disruption to the German economy. Now, you can argue about what the price worth paying to achieve this is, but that's the German perspective, and I think they have a particular vulnerability when it comes to oil because of their use of pipelines.
So he's still hanging around in that zone. Gold same, pretty much in a range at the moment. We're waiting for this last bit of economic news, which again has not been mentioned at all. This is how all this is overriding. Going to push one of these markets down. Make more like the US-30.
John, it's pretty interesting. And sticking with the coal story, the top sector on the day, utilities up more than 1%, up 1.3%. Making it interesting, of course, is the fact that yields are higher, so this dividend-rich sector should be down, but it has everything to do with coal soaring. Not far behind utilities. Energy up 1.2% with oil. Yesterday's top sectors, the worst sectors, communication services, discretionary, and tech. Of course, all those mega cap sectors down just a little bit today.
5 minutes to go to the final news event, and then you've got Fed speeches as well, so that's where you get in and out on any of these trades. A lot of Fed talk.
And this, of course, John, as they're
dangerous times to trade, as we know.
Saying that there's a recession of some sort.
So we'll get the coffee on, watch the news, and you know, see if there might be some trades later on towards the end of the US session, which we like to do. We'll nip back in if that is the case. If not, that's us done for the day. We've traded the first 30 minutes of London, and we've traded the first 30 minutes of New York. And obviously we did a little bit of pre-market trading as well, so all in all good. I say we've done about 35 trades today. A bit tougher than usual, 35 trades, but just 3 losses out of all that. And we're in the green again, which is what it's all about. We've got no positions at the moment. We're just literally waiting. You know, I want to take some sales on US-30. I want to take some sales on gold, but you know, until we actually see the moves, measure to see what the plan is. Any move? What was that chance? DAX was a good mover today as well. The London Open.
Access the financial world on demand.
On again, US Open. Nice little push up look. Followed that with the RSI. There's 27. 3 minutes before. Up. Nice. Win on the Open. Again, a nice 100 pips.
Visit Bloomberg.com webinars.
I think what we've seen during this period of time is that communicating via video is not a fad. We are using it in all aspects of our lives, for work, for learning, for communicating, for staying in touch.
Like I say, the key with the secret of the RSI is not jumping straight in as soon as the open happens. The direction is waiting for the kink to happen, the reversal. You know, some kind of move like that was a straight up move that was good. On the other one, you had the kink. So right here, and that's what you wait for.
Your trading diary looks like this.
Here we go, let's have a look.
Addressing the UN Security Council at the top of the hour. Fed speak throughout the day. Brainerd Daly Williams, all on the docket. Esther George coming up with Mike McKee. Don't miss that. Don't miss the President discussing healthcare at 1:30 this afternoon. Fed minutes come up tomorrow. Chairman Powell said, look for that for details.
The world can be a noisy place. Stock prices are set to soar. But what if under all the noise was opportunity? Join more than 3 million users in over 100 countries and be empowered with Capital.com.
Of balance sheet reduction, we will do just that. Oil executives on Capitol Hill coming up as well. And finally, rounding out Thursday with some jobless claims on Thursday morning from New York.
Yep, that's the one. We'll look at the continuing jobless claims, because that's been a really good winner. That has the initial jobless claims. Tomorrow, we haven't got any news trade, so if we do a stream, it'll just be purely on the market open, just a quick half-an-hour live stream. If we can catch pips again on DAX and US-30. There's nothing here I really want to get involved with, you know, at the moment, especially crude oil and gas, and then we've got the FOMC minutes, so we'll leave that alone. And Thursday, like I say, the one to trade is the continuing jobless claims. This is the one that has worked the last few months. Again, everything else I would leave alone for now. We don't worry about anything outside of German news anyway. Why there's nothing, so really a lackluster weak in terms of economic news, but that's a good thing because you're not going to get swayed into taking bad trades. Because like I say, the Russian news is the one to look at. So got this ISM coming now. Let's have a look. It's meant to be better than expected. Is it going to be?
Companies now, they're getting hundreds, maybe even thousands of applications. So software has come in to automate the process.
You want to write your resume for robots, not
3, 2, 1. Good luck. Let's see. It's 58.3, so it's about as expected, so it's not really going to do anything. So that's a no trade.
Exacerbate discrimination. For the FTC, I think foremost, the FTC needs to be making sure that we're fully understanding this technology.
We don't trust companies.
Really, that's you know, again, not going to make much difference, as you can see.
When it comes to workplace comp, why on earth would we trust them to self-regulate AI?
Gold up, that is, again, not really anything to do with it. ISM's worse than expected, but everything's still going high. Look, see, this is what I mean. You're going to get caught out with the economic calendar at the moment. It's just not happening the way it usually does. So but we're looking for, you know, we're looking overall for reversals on both these. That's what we'll be focused on. I'll be posting all this into the Discord group anyway, but as soon as we get a drop on the RSIs either, then we're in for the sales, and they'll be our final trades of the day. So we're waiting for sales on gold and US.
Pepsi's campaign in the Philippines has probably gone down in history as one of the biggest marketing disasters in history, mainly because of a human error that led Pepsi to print more winning caps than they planned. The resulting chaos caused riots, civil unrest, and killings. Reporting this story took over a year. It resulted in me.
We're going to just do a 30-minute live session tomorrow for the NY Open. We'll be back for that. But I'll leave you with those charts. Like I say, we're going to be looking for US-30 pullbacks, like I say, because they're well overbought now, 82, and gold 82 as well. So I'd leave these alone. Economic calendar doesn't do anything as we expected. So like I say, we'll be back tomorrow. Trade the NY Open live. Thank you for joining me today. Hope you enjoyed that stream. Successful. So we're about 35, 36 trades with just 3 losses. So well happy with that. But thank you. Give us a like. Hit that like button. Please subscribe and also share and tell people about our true live scalping. And I will see you guys on the next live stream tomorrow. Until then, trade safe and take care.